watching YourTown TV. Your host today, me, Thomas Hood. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We hope to have an interesting discussion today with a very special guest and a good friend of mine, President of the Carmel Chamber, Mr. Ben Beesley. Ben's got quite a history behind him. He did grow up on the peninsula, and after traveling away, going to San Luis Obispo, he was head of the Alumni Relations Director at San Luis Obispo, where he studied humanities. After coming back to Monterey with several forays with Up With People, if you might remember that, for those of you over 35, they used to sing. It was a great group, and they did a lot of volunteer work in the communities they traveled with. I'm sure Ben can tell us a little about that. Ben's now with the Beesley Group, Keller Williams Real Estate in Monterey and Carmel, and has quite a bit to tell us about his past and what he's been doing. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thomas, I'm thrilled to be here.
Good.
By the way, congratulations on your first host.
It's my first host, yes. It's always easier to be on the interviewing side or the intervening side as opposed to sitting here, but thanks for coming over and joining us today. Ben, you've been a lot of different places, and you've traveled a lot. You've always been involved in groups and organizing groups and moving forward. Mm-hmm. Tell me how that translated into your becoming a real estate agent.
Wow. Well, so you mentioned a couple things when I was director of alumni at Cal Poly. Before that, I had traveled with Up With People, and so we did event management. We put on basically Disney-esque shows all over the world with multiculturals performing. And then when I worked for DoubleTree Hotel, so I was in hospitality.
So you were the people that got him up in the morning and got him back on the bus?
Yeah, because you didn't want to see me perform.
Amongst other things.
You didn't want to see me perform. But anyway, so I've always been with people and moving people and getting them motivated or organizing or logistics. And what's really interesting is you kind of do that a little bit with real estate. Whether it be with sellers, you've got a lot of different things to put together. With buyers, you've got to get them, kind of almost help them decide what they want. Usually they don't know what they want.
So in a sense, between the seller, the potential buyer, the title companies, the inspectors, you're sort of the quarterback? Is that
can I use that in the future? I like it.
You can steal anything we say.
I was not a quarterback in high school. They wouldn't let me touch the ball. But no, that's absolutely. There's so much coordination. I think we counted 350 individual things you need to do in the course of a normal transaction that I'm responsible for. And most people think it's just writing the offer and collecting the check. No, there's tons of things that happen in between.
It reminds me a little bit in my profession as an architect. If I actually told a new client how many decisions they would have to make or how many steps we have to go through, my guess is most of them would never venture into it. So it's essentially you're guiding them, you're midwifing the process, and at the same time, not letting them sweat the details too much. You make it look easy.
We generally say that when you're on a plane with a pilot, there's going to be turbulence. But you've got a really good pilot. So we like to say, yeah, there's going to be turbulence along the way, but you've got a really good pilot in this case.
So you're a pilot and a quarterback.
You said it, not mine.
And a psychologist.
I'll take it.
Oh, okay. Well, you started this agency in Carmel with your mom. Is that right?
Yeah. So my mom was in the business for about 8 years before I was. I was down at Cal Poly, director of alumni. I went to Loyola Marymount for a second. Yeah. Came back with both a real estate license and a bartending license. Wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. My mom had been in the business, very successful. It's kind of iconic. She started the Women's Council of Realtors. She later became the chair of the board of the Monterey County Association of Realtors. Everybody knew my mom. So I came back in 2002, and we formed Team Beesley at the time. And so we worked with another company, great company, but we were exposed to this company called Keller Williams, and we were just so enthralled with what they did differently, the education, the culture, the community support, the teamwork. It was unprecedented. And,
now, what I've heard that is that it's actually the largest real estate company in the United States?
In the world.
In the world?
In the world. By far in the United States. We have 135,000 agents in the United States. I think the second, it was a company has about 80. So we're ridiculously, but we don't advertise Keller Williams. We advertise the agents or we advertise the listings.
So in a sense, the brand is your brand,
yeah,
not the name always out there in front.
And to be honest,
that's
the way it is for everybody, but they just don't believe it.
Okay.
I can tell you, you could probably name more individual realtors that work for Coldwell Banker than you can if I said who works for Coldwell Banker.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that makes sense.
Or any other company.
Your transactions with your clients are all about the relationships. They're not picking you because of the color of your sign.
100%.
All right.
Yeah.
That's not unlike a lot of referral and professional service businesses. There's got to be that relationship there for things to really.
But it's fun, and there's a team-oriented environment. And I could go into the details, but that would be a whole other segment. But just it's fun. It's a blast, and we have a lot more fun in our office than I've ever had anywhere else.
And your practice, your office is focused entirely on the Monterey Peninsula, or are you doing things outside?
No, I've got a partner that I work with up in North County. We've actually just picked up a 1,500 square foot spec home up in North County from a very prominent builder. We've also have 10 of his 30 lots that we're selling. So I've got a mini team there. I do a lot of Monterey Peninsula. Occasionally, I'm a referral-based agent. If somebody says, Ben, I want you to sell my house in Salinas, I'll make it happen, and I'll do it at a very high level.
Well, with your business primarily focused on the Monterey Peninsula, but having worked worldwide and in other things, do you have some sense as to what makes Monterey County unique? Not the seals in the bay and the hiking trails and all those wonderful things, but in terms of a real estate professional that might make it different practicing here than elsewhere, say, for example, in San Francisco?
Well, every community has their own challenges or opportunities. I mean, Monterey County it's one of the most diverse counties around. When they think of Monterey County, they think of Carmel, but you look at what's going on in Salinas and the ag tech sector, or South County with migrant workers and all the different demographics. So you get to kind of know, okay, what works, what doesn't work, what's being sold, how's it being sold, how am I going to communicate with buyers and sellers in South County, North County versus Carmel by the Sea or Pebble Beach. So what I've done is I've actually created some strategic alliances with key agents in any of those areas so that I can give whoever it is, my buyers or sellers, the best service possible.
From my experience of running an architectural practice based in Carmel, but also primarily up in Marin until about 10 years ago, another diverse county, but the difference is you're right on the shoulders of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Right.
So there's that economic model, but then there's the whole agricultural model, the open space, Tamales Bay and the coast. So it actually, you've got a lot of people right down there next to the bridge, but it actually is a very diverse county as well. I would say Monterey County even more so, given the size of it.
Probably. And Monterey County, most people don't know, is one of the largest counties in the state.
That's true.
Right? I mean, just going from one place. Here's an interesting stat. The Carmel School District, same size as Rhode Island, 880 square miles. Or acres. But it's crazy. I mean, because it goes down to Big Sur, goes up to Pebble Beach, goes out to Cachalla. I mean,
But it's still a very small class size, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's one of
But
one
geographically,
of the best,
it's a huge area.
Geographically, absolutely huge, but the school system, as you know, and it affects real estate. It's one of the best in the state and one of the best in the country.
Well, from my experience when I was practicing in Chicago, was lucky enough to grow up in a school district north of the city. That was a huge corporate draw to say, okay, I'm being relocated from Cleveland to Chicago. Right. I want to be on the North Shore. In Marin County, it was the same thing. I want to be in the Kentfield School District where I practice. Do you find that when people move into the area with young children, are they being drawn primarily by the job? How much does the school district actually factor in when they start selecting a home with you?
So, and there's a million different answers, right? But I'm going to say most people are going to be moving from Monterey to Carmel as from a family perspective.
Really?
Well, we don't have that many jobs. We have CHOMP, our community hospital in this case. Yeah. But what other high-paying jobs, executive-level jobs, do we have in our community that where you would be based in Carmel? There's not a significant number. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to get a lot of move-up.
Okay.
But again, there's a lot of different stories. There are those that are coming from other areas just for the schools or because they have great jobs. But I'm going to say most of them, if they're buying Carmel for schools, they're coming from a local community.
That's really interesting. So you're having grown up in Monterey, that gives you an advantage, having known both sides of the hill, so to speak, that if they're in Monterey and through past relationships, you can say, okay, you're going to move over the hill. Let's take a look at that and see the opportunity. So they're already very familiar with that.
Yeah, and Pacific Grove too. I mean, there's a lot of movement from, and not to say that any school district is that much better, but if you go based on scores, yeah, so people might come from parts of Monterey to Pacific Grove, or Pacific Grove to Carmel, or Monterey to Carmel, depending on what their lifestyles are going. Most people, people will say, and I think Pacific Grove to a lesser extent, but it's still excellent. You're getting a private school education at a public school. I mean, they're teaching Chinese at Carmel Middle School.
I never got Chinese.
Yeah,
I got French.
Yeah, I got Spanish,
and
I didn't do well.
That's as far as we got. Well, the whole school system is completely different. So you've actually got probably a pretty diverse population in the school if they're coming over from Monterey, some coming from out of town.
Yeah, and when you think of Carmel, there's Carmel by the Sea, obviously a mile square. There's 3,500 people. But then you go Carmel, which goes all the way out past the village and up halfway up to the Los Royals grade. So you've got a lot more areas to play with. Okay. So your cost, like for example, I think Carmel by the Sea, your price per square foot is about $1,200 a square foot on average. The price per square foot outside of that 93923 is probably about $800, $700 to $800, and you get it for less and you get it for more. But your value is going to be much better.
Mm-hmm. And the draw in Carmel, and that value is not only the school district, but the unique ambiance that's Carmel, right?
Yeah, and that Carmel's a whole different, great animal to talk about.
Well, you just moved in a new place. You're up on Perry Newberry.
Yeah, thank you for letting everybody know. Yeah,
I know. I'm not going to give the cross street. But is that going to have any change in your business? Now that you're actually right there in town?
I didn't do it for business. I did it because I love Carmel. As you know, that I'm the chair of the board of the Carmel Chamber of Commerce. I love Carmel. I was baptized at the Mission. I was born in Mission Fields. It's a place I've gone to anyways. And it's Monterey I love just as much, but this is a whole different, that my social life will be around Carmel. If that translates to business, fantastic. But
that's great. That's great. If you've got people coming into town, and this is kind of maybe a difficult question, is if there was one most frequently asked question, a couple, whether they're in Monterey or he's gotten a job as a director at Fresh Choice or something.
Right.
What kind of questions do they come when they say, "We've heard about you, Ben. We got a referral from a friend"? Where does the conversation really start? House size?
Well, after they find out, is Clint still the mayor, or can I see him?
So that's the first question.
Well, no, it's for those that are not real serious. Yeah, they're going to go there first. So why are the houses so small?
Okay.
And if you're an architect, 80% of the lots are 4,000 square feet with a 1,600 square foot house.
And that was the mandate in 1931. Yeah. This will be the house size.
Right.
And as you know, in the council chambers, right behind the dais, is the proclamation. It will be a wooded residential community. No mention directly made of business in that statement.
No.
How do you feel about that, being a businessman?
Well, you have to have both. I get that the preamble's there, but the city of Carmel could not function without the businesses. Mm-hmm. I mean, the entire tax base that you're getting from your downtown business, your restaurants, your retail shops, and by the way, that's a great plug to say, help support your local communities, because the economy's changing, yet our demands are still there. So really go into Carmel or Monterey or Pacific Grove, but really go and support and thank them for being in business, because they're really what's keeping your infrastructure floating. They're paying for the police, they're paying for the fire, they're paying for the roads, they're paying for all the cool stuff that we get to enjoy. We don't do that directly as homeowners.
No, that's true. One thing I learned last year when I was asked to join the Carmel Heritage Society, which is about education about Carmel's history, primarily houses,
right,
but also historic buildings, is that instead of digging through the histories and reading a lot of the short stories during our centennial, is understanding that, at one point it was supposed to be a Catholic retreat, right, which was about 1900. When Mr. Devendorf and Mr. Powers came along, they essentially purchased a defunct experiment, right, laid out the town 1 square mile, and as I understand it, Mr. Devendorf, when they were selling land back then, he would finance buyers, and these lots are going for, I think it was $500.
Yeah,
$500,
and he helped finance it.
He helped finance it, and when we were putting our exhibit together at the Heritage Society over at the First Murphy House last year, I actually came across a photograph of what we believe is Mr. Devendorf handing out trees. And as I understand, he used to walk around town and say, this is going to be a wooded community. This is the atmosphere that we've created. If you understand where it came from, and then you read the statement about settlement of Carmel, that history really continues, but there always has been a tourist element to it. There's been both.
Well, I mean, that's it started. He brought artisans down here. I mean, these were not businessmen that were coming down. He was setting this whole place up.
That was Powers, being a San Francisco attorney.
Yeah, and it really flourished after the earthquake. They said, okay, let's come down, let's get away from that, and it's always been that. And so lover of your environment and lover of the arts, lover of and it still exists. I mean, the Forest Theater, thank goodness they brought it back. It's such a great part of just artisans and community and trees.
What I think is kind of remarkable, when they reopened the Forest Theater last spring after a extensive renovation, it looked the same. And that is something unique to Carmel, is usually improvement means change is visible, bigger, brighter, shinier. And what I find kind of remarkable as a resident in Carmel and as a practicing architect is working to preserve what's there. And it's not just out of sentimentality. It's to maintain this feeling that actually makes Carmel unique. It's an off-the-grid place that is a global brand at the same time. And that's a struggle, really, with city government is to keep it that feeling at the same time, have a thriving business community. Real estate's a huge part of that.
Oh yeah, I would say I mean, architecturally speaking, I mean, Carmel's probably one of the most significant small communities you can find as far as what they've done with it, and because they've maintained the character. Yeah. You know, we'll talk a little bit later about my role with the chamber, but one of the things that they were talking about reducing wooden fireplace. Mm-hmm. And I spoke as a realtor against it because it's such a significant part of our architectural history, is these big stone fireplaces, and to change that.
To use Louis Sullivan's phrase, the fireside chat it's not only a tradition or something, you know, kind of cozy and warm. It's what you need to do at night when it really cools down along the coast.
No, completely.
Well, I just want to take a minute to touch base on something I think enters a lot of people's minds, people buying homes, people in my profession, is the impact, positive challenges with having a historic property. You come to town, you find the perfect house. They say, Ben, what does it mean to have a historic house? What do you say then?
Well, you said a challenge. I'd look at it as an opportunity.
Okay.
You got an opportunity to preserve something that is critical to what we enjoy so much. Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as, so if you have a house and there's, I think I told you, there's 294 buildings, that's commercial and homes, that are on the historical registry. I think that number's about right. And it's designated historical for a reason. You can still do things, but you need to keep whatever's visible from the street pretty much integral. That has to stay pretty much the same. You can make it, you know, refresh it, but seriously, you're not going to be changing the porch or the facade or anything else. But behind it, with permits, as long as you don't go outside of the building envelope that they allow, you can pretty much do what you can as long as you work with the city to make sure that happens. But really, that front of the building is not going to change, and therefore we get to enjoy this Carmel by the sea that's been like that since 1900. I've
got a short story that, with the time we have left here, I think is interesting. Last year I was named to the Carmel Historic Resources Board for the city. A friend of mine's back in a snowstorm back in the Midwest. I'm down on Carmel Beach with Matthew Sunt, city planner, and the rest of the board, and we're staying on the sand, looking up at Frank Lloyd Wright's Walker Residence, one of his most famous houses. Right. On a Monday afternoon, listening to describe how he's going to restore the seawall, and being a part of that process to just hear and encourage, right. At the same time educate people in the community of the importance of maintaining these historic resources. It's a great free job, yeah. And you get access to see some of these buildings.
Well, I don't know if you noticed in there, the Devendorf and Powers, they were offered $75,000 to build a boardwalk in Carmel, and they said no, I don't want it.
No, they wanted
to maintain what they had, their whole vision.
This whole idea of maintaining Carmel's history, paving Main Street was a major battle back in the 20s. What I think is fascinating about what you're doing is you're having to understand history, build on relationships, often by referral, but as a native on the peninsula, it sounds like you're doing a fantastic job. I'm really glad you came here. You're watching YourTown. My name is Thomas Hood. Thanks for watching.